I'm Lisa Rubel from Love to Color My World, and I'm here to show you how to make these Strippy Improv ornament blocks. You can see I've made them in a couple different colors, and all you need to make them are between 7 and 9 1.5 by 8 inch strips of different colored fabrics, a square of background fabric, a piece of muslin or some sort of foundation fabric, and a little fusible web. So let me show you how these go together. So I've got my ornament template cut out, and I'm going to lay it on top of my muslin square and trace around it with a fabric marking pen. Now, especially if you are using lighter colored strips for your piecing, you want to make sure that you're either marking very lightly or using a very light colored fabric marking pen, because if the lines don't come off, you'll see them through your strip piecing. So I've got my shape drawn on here, and that's my guide so that I know that I've got fabric covering all of those spots. So I'm going to start out with a green strip at the bottom, and I'm going to place it right side up, making sure that it's covering the bottom of my ornament shape. And then I'm going to lay my next strip on top, right sides together. And if you want it to just be straight piecing, you can lay it down so the raw edges match and just go ahead and sew. I like them to have a little wonk to them, a little improv, so I'm going to angle it slightly so that my strips go on at an angle. So that my next step is to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance following that edge of that top piece. And I don't pin for this, I just kind of wing it and sew because it doesn't need to be perfect. All you need to make sure is that your stitch line extends beyond the line of the ornament on both ends. Okay. And then what I like to do, just to eliminate bulk, is to fold the muslin back. This is kind of like paper piecing, where you fold the paper out of the way, and position my ruler up against the raw edge of my top fabric and trim that little angled piece from my bottom strip. And that way I just don't have the extra bulk of the fabric. So now I will lay this down and press this second strip open. So you can see I've got my first and second strips attached right there, and now we're going to add the third strip. I'm going to alternate red and green. So I've got my green strip next. I'm going to place it face down. I'm going to angle this one the other way. My first one angled like this, and my second one is going to angle more like this. So I'm going to lay it down on top of my strips that are already there. I want to make sure that near the edge my raw edges are close. If you have it too high up and you go to stitch, when you open you'll have a gap. So you want to be able to see the edge of that bottom strip and stitch all the way across. And again, just make sure your stitch lines are outside of the drawn ornament lines. I'm going to fold my muslin back again and trim off that excess red. And then press this open. My third strip. You can see I've already got some angle going on here, and that's what we're looking for to make this an improv. Press this a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add my third strip, this red and white one, and I'm going to angle this back the other direction. At most, I would say my angle is about 1/4 inch. You don't want to go too much more than that. So I'm going to come over and stitch this one on as well. Trim off that excess, making sure I'm not cutting through my muslin foundation. And I'm going to press my fourth strip. I'm starting to get a nice stripy ornament here. Now it's time for another green strip. So I'm going to put this one on and angle it. Come over and stitch it on. And you continue adding strips on like that all the way up until the body of the ornament is filled up with colored strips. And then the last thing that we'll add on is the cap to the ornament, which is just a tiny scrap of a different color. Okay, so I've got all of my strips sewn on. I'm covering up my entire ornament shape. So what we're gonna do is position that. You can kind of see where the cap drawing is and position it below that, parallel with the top line of it so that it's kind of angled in the right direction, and just stitch right across that edge to hold it in place. I'm going to press that open, and now I've got my little cap on the top. Now we're going to set this strip pieced foundation unit off to the side and work on our background. Now, background is a little bit of a confusing word for this because it actually will be on top of our strip piecing, but it still is the background around the ornament. So I've got my background square, which is cut to 9 inches, and so I can square it up to 8.5. And what I like to do is to press this in half in both directions to find the middle, just so I can center my shape a little bit. And I've got my ornament also traced onto the paper side of fusible web. And I cut it out about between 1/2 inch and 1 inch outside of the shape, because the way that you fuse this on, it won't necessarily be fusing to fabric if you would have it the same size as your square. So you want to cut it down closer to the shape, and I'm going to put it on the wrong side of my fabric. If you put it with the cap straight up and down, your ornament will sit straight with the cap pointing up. I like to tilt it a little bit one way or the other, and then just kind of either eyeball or measure and see that you've got it pretty much centered on the block. You can also use the reference point of the folded lines to check that as well. So I'm happy with the placement of it, and I'm going to fuse this in place. Get it nice and secure. And then once this is done, we're practically done putting this block together. Now, if you want to get more involved in this process of making these blocks, or feel like you need a little more information, I do have a pattern using this technique to make a little ornament wall hanging, and that's available on my Etsy site. It will also give you some template shapes for a couple other ones, which I'll show you at the end as well. So the next step is going to be to cut out the center of the ornament. We're going to keep the background, or the negative shape, and cut out the center. So you want to make sure that after you poke through the center that you cut a really nice, careful line around the outside, because usually when you're cutting applique, you're keeping the shape, the inside, and in this case we're doing the opposite, and we're keeping the outside. So just keep that in mind and cut as cleanly as you can. And there we go, I just have the little cap to do. And then the next and very important step, which I, in my excitement to see how these blocks have turned out, have forgotten more times than I care to admit, is to remove the paper from the outline of your ornament. It's always kind of funny when you go to press it in place and it's not sticking and you can't figure out why, and it turns out because the paper's still on. It doesn't work real well. Okay, so I'm going to set down my strip piece block. Got a little extra string there. You want to make sure you get any strings out of the way so that they don't accidentally get fused in place. And then going to lay our background on top. The place you want to focus on is up by this cap, to make sure that the bottom edge of that gray cap lines up with those corners that create the cap shape. You don't want it to be up here or down there. You want to try to get those lined up as much as you can. So what I do is I focus on that, and then I press just this part so I know that that place is secure exactly where I need it. And once that's secure, at least enough to get it started, then I kind of smooth out the rest, because with a bigger shape it's easy to have some puckers. So you want to make sure you've got your shape as flat as possible on top of that strip piecing. And then I just go briefly around the whole thing just to get the glue started, get the adhesive activating, and then go back and continue pressing until it's all secure. Now you notice that I've got these edges hanging out because I angled my ornament. So you can head over to your cutting station and trim those off. All 4 of them. Okay. So here's what my block looks like. The last thing you want to do is to do a top stitch, and I like to do it in a color that blends in with the background so you don't see it, but a top stitch as close to the edge of your applique on the background. So I'm going to use black thread to outline this ornament, and that will just help to hold the background reverse applique in place on your strip piecing. And then you can square the block up to 8.5 inches and it's complete. So you can use this to make just a little mug rug. You can use it to make a oversized fabric postcard. Like I said, I've got a pattern that turns it into a wall hanging or a table runner using 4 of these ornaments. And I've got the directions in there to do that. And I'll show you a couple of the other shapes that I have. I did a star. I did a red and white candy cane. And I did a tree where I did some some fancy machine stitching on the tree to decorate it. And then a little snowman. And all of these use this Strippy Improv technique. And in the pattern are the templates to create all of those shapes, the ornament plus the other 4 that I've shown you. So I hope that you enjoyed getting to see the magic of reverse applique and how you can make a Strippy Improv block with a little bit of foundation, some scraps, fusible web, and your background piece. These are super addictive to make. I've already made about 12 of them, and I've got plans to make more. So if you'd like to see more of my work, make sure you follow me on Instagram at LisaAaron1121. Visit my blog, lovetocolormyworld.blogspot.com, or head over to my Etsy shop to check out my Strippy Improv holiday pattern and the other patterns I've got there as well. Thanks, and have a great holiday.